In a predominantly black neighborhood, Watts of Los Angeles, racial tension finally reached its breaking point after two white police officers scuffled with a black motorist, suspected of drunk driving. A crowd gathered on Avalon Boulevard and 16th Street to watch the arrest, and soon the crowd became angry, to which they believe is yet another incident of racially motivated abuse by the police. As the riots began, many of the residents of Watts were embittered after years and years of economic and political isolation. Soon, the rioters ranged over a 50 square mile area of south central Los Angeles, looting stores, torching buildings, and beating whites as snipers fired at police officers and firefighters. Finally, with the help of the National Guardsmen, order was restored on August 16th. 5 days of rioting left 34 dead, 1,032 injured, nearly 4,000 arrested, and $40 million worth of property damage. The Wyatt's riot was the worst urban riot coming and foreshadowed many rebellions that came in Detroit, Newark, and other American cities. The dynamics of the Watts riots lasted for 5 days. Wednesday, August 11th, 1965 to Saturday, August 14th, 1965. Stores and official buildings were being broken into, looted, and frequently burned. As I said before, 34 were killed and 132 reported injury. On Wednesday, August 11th, 1965, Marquette Fry, a 20-year-old black man, was arrested for drunk driving on the edge of the Watts neighborhood. Fry has been drinking and was driving with his brother Ronald in the car when the two were pulled over 2 blocks from their home. While Marquette was being arrested, Ronald retrieved their mother from her home. When Miss Fry saw her son being forcibly arrested, she fought with the arresting officers, tearing one officer's shirt. An officer then struck Marquette's head with a nightstick, and all three of the Frys were arrested. By the time the Frys were arrested, hundreds of onlookers had been drawn to the scene. Anger and rumors spread quickly throughout the black community, and residents stoned cars and beat white people who entered the neighborhood. A neighborhood meeting called by the Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission the following day failed to quell the mounting tension, and that evening rioting resumed. Firemen attempting to put out blaze were shot by the residents, and looting was rampant. All day Friday, the riots intensified, prompting the California Lieutenant Governor to call in the National Guard. By Saturday night, a curfew had been set, and nearly 14,000 National Guard troops were patrolling a 46-mile area. In the early 1950s, there was an increase in African Americans in the South Los Angeles. Also, south of Los Angeles, such as Watts, became the site of significant racial violence. Also, there was an increase in suburbs in South Los Angeles, which were predominantly white. In the predominantly black neighborhoods were inadequate schools and housings, low income, high unemployment rates, too little work nearby, and no transportation to the jobs in the suburbs, as well as police being viewed as brutal, insensitive representatives of a racist and closed society. The causes of the Watts uprising can be arguable. Many have said that it's the poverty, the racial discrimination, or the overall mistreatment of the residents of the Watts neighborhood. From my research, many of the rioters justify their actions by saying that the riots were social protests. A social protest is an action that expresses a grievance or a conviction of wrong or injustice. Many said that the social protest also was caused because the protesters were unable to correct the condition by their own effort. The purpose of a social protest is to bring attention to their grievances. As I drew deeper into my research, these three things came up as the causes of why violence became an effective method in social change. The three things are racial isolation, powerlessness, and racial dissatisfaction. Racial isolation is a particular individual of a particular race feeling isolated and a sense of powerlessness in their society. Many of the blacks were isolated from the whites for those who were in suburbs. Those who lived in the suburbs had a greater opportunity than the blacks. Blacks were faced with lack of housing, lack of schooling, and lack of job opportunities, such as the whites were presented. In my research, those who were isolated were believed to have a weak commitment to public pressures and to the democratic norms. For those who were in the Watts neighborhood, grievances increased and the bonds to society weakened. As a result, there was an explosion of violence rather than the use of negotiation. Many of the residents of the Watts neighborhood felt powerless. Those who felt powerless were more likely to change their position or to control crucial decisions by using violent methods to get their rights. Those who felt powerless believed that all channels of social redress were closed. Those who were in the Watts neighborhood felt a great amount of racial dissatisfaction. Racial dissatisfaction is the degree of an individual feels that he or she is being treated badly because of his or her race. Many of the expression of violence in the Watts riots were expression of frustration and discontentment of their treatment. Those who had intense feeling of powerlessness and dissatisfaction were prone to violence. Isolation had the strongest effect upon violent action as well. A youth stated that participated in the riot said, "We won." When asked why he felt a sense of victory, he replied, "Now the whole world is paying attention to us." Rioting was not used to destroy neighborhoods, buildings, stores, or businesses. Rioting was used to express the grievances that they felt was so greatly ignored by the nation. In conclusion, because the residents of the Watts neighborhood felt racial isolation, powerlessness, and racial dissatisfaction, violence became the only effective method to create social change in their world.